6:32. We're going to begin with board reorganization since we had our elections yesterday. So at this point, I will accept nominations for the role of board chair. Are there any nominations for board chair?
I will nominate Jean Marie.
I have one nomination for Jean Marie Clark. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of Jean Marie Clark for board chair, please say aye.
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 Oh, do we have to do roll? So because Aaron is by phone, we're going to have to do roll. So if you can state your name and yay or nay.
Catherine, aye.
Mary, aye.
Miranda, aye.
John, aye.
Aaron?
Aaron, aye.
Thank you.
How about you, Jean Marie?
I guess so.
Congratulations, you're the new board chair.
I said to Emily when I rolled in here, good news, I got my board seat back. You get to have me running the show, rolling at the last second for another 3 years.
I'm going to come sit next to you so we can do all of that. You can go next to the vice chair. Vice chair.
Okay, so nominations for the vice chair. Anybody want to make a nomination for that?
I'll nominate Mary.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay. By roll, Aaron, we'll start with you. How do you vote for Mary?
Aaron, yes.
Emily, yes.
John, yes.
Jean Marie, yes.
Catherine, yes.
Mary, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and congratulations. And clerk is our next position. Who's our current clerk? Is it Aaron? Yes, I thought it was Aaron. Nominations for the clerk position.
I'll nominate Erin.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, we'll start with Catherine.
Catherine, yes.
Mary, yes.
Jean Marie, yes.
Miranda, yes. Emily, yes.
John, yes.
Aaron, what's your flavor?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next you need 3 reps to the SU board.
Yes, and can we be reminded who our current reps are? Me, Mary, and Aaron. Right? Aaron, are you? No?
Emily.
Emily.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay.
This is for what? Sorry.
The SU board.
Yeah. Nominations for the SU board. Do we want to do them as a group?
You could choose to do them individually or as a
a-
slate of
yeah.
candidates.
Would any of our freshies like to be on the SU board?
I'll nominate the same group. Mary, Jean Marie, and
And Emily. Okay. Any other nominations?
Who was it? Sorry, Jean Marie.
Mary and Emily.
Thank you.
Okay. Aaron, let's vote by roll.
Aaron, aye.
John,
Emily, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Mary, aye.
Catherine, aye.
Thank you. Sorry. Oh, the policy committee is 1 candidate?
Yes.
Okay.
2.
And
Oh,
2
2?
candidates.
And it was Catherine and Lisa.
Okay.
I'll nominate Miranda.
Okay. Paul, are you interested in being on the policy committee again?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll nominate Catherine.
It's just one?
No, it's 2.
Okay.
So did you want to retract your nomination and try it? We can vote it as a slate?
Oh, sure.
So can you hold on just 1 second? So I just want to make sure you know that they're the first Wednesday of every month here at 3:30. Is that?
Can we do that?
It's
Yeah,
back
it's a
to back
timing thing.
with this.
Yeah. John?
it's tough for me.
Yeah, okay.
So Lisa, I know, has done this for a long time.
Yeah,
It's
I do
something she
too.
takes very seriously.
Okay. So do you want to retract?
I'll retract that.
And do you want to make a new nomination?
I'll nominate Lisa.
And
Catherine.
perfect, thank you. Okay, let's start with Aaron. How do you vote?
Can you just tell me again who's nominated?
Yeah, so it's Lisa Hango and Catherine who were the previous policy policy
Thank you.
committee members, yeah. How do you,
Maren, yes.
thank you.
John, yes.
Jean Marie, yes.
Mary, yes.
Catherine, yes.
Great, thank you.
Negotiation G2 for
Okay.
teachers and 2 for support staff.
Okay, so for our negotiations
Well, it could be
committee,
the same 2. and it's
Right.
just a conflict.
right,
And you probably don't need support staff.
because we just
That's
finished
true.
that.
We're not gonna do it again, so just teachers.
Well, we'll eventually do it again.
But you have to reorganize next year.
Oh, right,
And
okay,
just-
and won't be
you're gonna
done this
sign
year.
them
Okay,
every year,
gotcha.
hopefully.
So we need 2 folks to be on the negotiations committee, and the upcoming negotiations will be with the teachers. I was previously on it, and you were too, Mary, yeah.
I'm fine to do it again.
Yeah, me too. Just
I'll nominate Jean Marie and Mary.
like victims. Thank you. Okay, Erin, so the nomination is for myself and Mary to be on the negotiations committee. How would you vote?
Maren, I.
John,
Emily, I.
Jean Marie, aye.
Mary, I.
Catherine, I.
Thank you.
Just talk about whether or not this still works.
Yes, so we are currently meeting on the first Wednesday of the month, and our practice has been that, for this last year, for as long as I practiced, that is, that we have been meeting in a different school building every month, except for the months of, I think is it January, February, and March?
Yes.
So those are, in theory, the snowiest months, so we picked Enos here because of just easier travel for folks. So I would offer that I think that's worked out well. We've been able to take some time in each building to tour around and kind of get to know what happens in those buildings, and it feels good to offer time in each community for those local folks to come to the board if they, it's easier for them to come to the board when it's in their community, of course. So so I like the rotating schedule. I don't know if any of the rest of you have any other comments.
It worked out well.
Okay, good. I forget what our previous schedule was. Bakersfield was on Mondays, and so we moved to Wednesdays.
I can do Mondays. Mondays was fine.
Okay. Thoughts on keeping, changing?
Are you okay keeping the
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Okay, ladies, Wednesdays?
It works.
We somehow moved to Wednesdays at 6:30. You guys okay with that?
I think it's can I just clarify
Sure,
something with
please.
Morgan? We had a conversation, but it was weeks ago at this point. The conflict was not with this schedule, it was with the other, back-to-back with SU, right? Or was it this board?
Is the other
It's
side.
the other board, okay.
So.
So keep it the same?
I think so. I seem to work okay. Yeah. And you folks? Yeah, okay.
Can I take this one?
Sure.
So we had talked last year about setting a summer board retreat, and then by the time we tried to schedule it in late spring, it was impossible. People had vacations already in their calendar. So what I'm hoping is that we can pick a date and time to do a board retreat and take a deep look at that portrait of a graduate that should be done prior to the board retreat, and then establish the mission and vision, and then write the goals for the supervisory union. So I would like a common day for board retreat. So what I would like to propose is either late June or early mid-July, and I'll have Courtney send out a survey in the next week or so with some dates.
Yeah.
So if you could do, when you do the survey, if you could do all available instead of preferred, because it is very hard to merge this many calendars. So, does that sound
This
reasonable?
many calendars?
It's
us?
14, yours and the
Okay,
other,
that's what I
yeah.
thought. Okay.
What I wouldn't want is to have both boards going in completely different directions.
Right.
When we're feeding into the same
One
system,
SU,
ultimately,
yeah.
it makes more
Yeah.
sense for us to be working on that pre-K-12 mission vision
Gotcha. Okay.
goal setting. So does that time frame sound reasonable for people?
Like a
June,
day?
July.
What are you
Yeah,
thinking?
I'm thinking, I wouldn't mind scheduling two in case we need it and cancel the second, if we don't need it, and probably a 3-hour chunk on both nights, maybe a
Oh,
5 to 8, something like that, to give people time to get back, or a 5:30 to 8:30, and, we'll do dinner like we did for the
Yeah.
last board training,
The earlier in the summer, the better, I think.
I do too.
okay.
Same.
So we'll shoot for a June.
Aaron, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, the Best Institute is that last week of June,
Okay,
and so I'll be gone that entire. Just wanted one thing is there for me to go, but my school's planning on going to that.
okay. Okay. You good with your postings? Where your locations
Yeah.
are currently?
Yeah, so we post in a variety of places our meeting notifications. Does anybody have any heard any complaints about where they're posted?
No. It's been fine in Montgomery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Robert's rules?
Oh, yes. So the big difference of using Robert's rules for small boards is that we don't require seconds. That's really the biggest change, I think, right? That's what we've operated under for the last year. I don't know what you
And you
guys have.
vote. Is the board chair on everything?
Oh, yes, and I get to that. So if we're okay with that, yeah, this makes things a little bit easier, so.
Okay. The next thing is the code of ethics, and I'm gonna actually pass this around. If you could take 2 copies. This is just as board members each year, when we reorganize, I'm gonna ask you to read the code of ethics. It's just a reminder of ethical practices as a board member. And I would ask you to sign both, give one back to me, and keep one. If you have any questions, we can talk about it. But if we could do that, that'd be great.
I like this one. Recognize that board members' responsibility is to see that schools are well-run, but not to run them.
Correct.
That's sometimes not how other folks see our position.
Can I take these last ones?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I don't know how much we need to say about this next one. So the next thing on our list for operational decisions is to discuss and identify communication practices. So there are 2 pieces here. In the past, we have not chosen as a board to choose a paper of record. So that's one piece of this. The other piece is about communicating to the media if there is something that comes up. So just a conversation about making sure that when you're asked to comment on something, if you're outside of a board meeting, you're not representative of the board. You're representative of the public. So you can't speak for the board outside a meeting. So what has generally happened in the past is questions from reporters have been generally posed to the board chair, and I'm always available for consult if anything comes up. If you're approached, I would be happy to take that. The other piece about communication is just about chain of authority, so making sure that if people come to you and they're trying to communicate directly with you before they have gone through the proper chain, which would be the source that they have the concern about. If not addressed at that level, the building principal. If not addressed at that level, to my level, and then ultimately to the board, but making sure that you're encouraging people to go back and start from the beginning and communicate appropriately. Anything that you want to discuss under that?
I was just thinking today as I was going through my emails about how we approve purchase the payment vouchers, and like you're going to be inundated with these. So we made a decision last year to because the SU office is located in Richford and none of us are located in Richford, that instead of waiting for somebody to go in for the majority of the purchase vouchers, I think it's mostly Roxanne sends out a message to all of us at large and says, here is something that I need approved for payment, and with all the documentation, it's generally several pages long, and we then have to two of us have to approve it. So you would get an email from Roxanne, and then if you approve it, then you would just reply all, so that I see in my email that two people, I don't have to deal with it because two people have ours. Just she will send it to the crowd and say I need two approvals, but be forewarned. And like I know Leanne did them frequently, like in the evenings, like she would go through her email and send those through. So it's just really helpful if you reply all, so we know what's going on. But and if you have questions to ask, you know, I know some of us have more questions than others. Very nice. It's really good though. It's
a good thing.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I want to say, just as you're reorganizing, is to just reiterate that VSBA is your agency, and they offer a lot of training opportunities throughout the year. So I'd encourage you, when you can, to engage in those training opportunities. And there is money built into the budget for your own professional development. There will be webinars offered throughout the year. There are sometimes regional trainings that happen as close as St. Albans, and there are other trainings that happen statewide. So just, you know, be on the lookout for that information, and certainly those that have gone and attended have always come back and said it's well worth going to the training. We also will be, yeah.
I just want, one of you has that essentials book, or maybe you both have it. Someone taught me. So the VSBA offers this essentials workshop. I don't know when.
November or May. It's in one of those two.
Is it? Yeah. So it's an evening. It's kind of like how to be a good board member, like really to help you understand how to be a board member. So I would encourage you to go, and I've been to them in St. Albans. I've been to them in the Winooski High School. Like they do them all around the state regionally. So if you have an opportunity to go, I think it's a really helpful thing just to keep your. So it's through the Vermont School Board Association, and it's called Essentials of Board Work.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's just kind of like the intro beginner course. It's maybe 3-ish hours long, and I found it helpful. And then there's other new board members there, so they do a nice job with all the trainings that they offer, but that's a good one just as a new board member.
In terms of advocacy, the VSBA does a lot of advocating on your behalf at the Vermont legislature. You will get legislative updates on a regular basis from the VSBA that are interesting to look at, and I'll be giving you legislative updates as well. And one final reminder that all elected board members are not allowed to receive payment for any services within the supervisory union or supervisory district unless they have the authorization from the Secretary of Education. So you can't work for us and be a board member. So I'll give you an example. If you decided that you wanted to coach a team and that we couldn't find someone to coach a team, you can't, because you're a board member unless I get a waiver from the Secretary of Education. So just want to say that and point that out. When you've signed your sheet, if you could put it on the table, and if they're not done, it's fine. I'll have Morgan grab them. Would you mind if we go into prioritization? So that
that would be fine. Okay, so Lynn wants to reorganize our schedule for the evening a little bit. That sounds like a fine plan to me.
Yes. So I think, actually, you know what? I actually had foresight and did that already.
Oh.
I did move to that next section.
You want to go ahead with your report? Is that what you're trying to say?
So-
Yeah, please, go right ahead.
So people are aware, I'm not trying to rush for a random reason, but we actually we have a hiring process happening right now at the elementary school, so we're working on their board interviews happening over there. So I told them I would come here, do my part, and then head back that way. So under mine, I'm going to talk about personnel. I will be in the next few months giving you lots and lots of resignation and hiring updates as we go through the season. I am not prepared to do that today. You may see in some of the principal reports, there may be some updates about that there. I do have, under personnel, I have a request from Carrie Brush, who is an elementary teacher at Sheldon, for a 1-year leave of absence. So Carrie is, Carrie's going to have her first baby, and is requesting time to be at home with the baby. There's been some complications and some challenges, and I think that I am very aware of what's going on with Carrie, as is Christy, and I think that it makes sense to honor her request for a leave of absence.
What does she teach?
Grade 3-4.
Can we have some sort of a backup plan, I'm assuming? We'll come up with a backup plan.
So we would offer a 1-year position. That'd be the plan. So I'll need a motion on that one.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Emily. All in favor, let's start with you, Erin.
Erin, aye.
John, I.
Maria.
Jean Marie, aye.
Mary, aye.
Catherine, I.
Thank you all.
So last month we talked about a student residency request from Sheldon. And I think that's what our visitors are doing here today. So there has been some update there, and I think that they are purchasing a home within your district. So I think that it makes perfect sense to allow, I don't remember your first name, I'm really sorry. Cadence, to allow Cadence to finish her 8th grade year at Sheldon.
Staying within the district makes it way easier. Yeah. The last time, I guess we just were talking about like when you were moving, and is that all pertinent to this conversation now?
I think you're good now.
Yeah, okay. You'd like a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so who would like to make the motion to allow Cadence to stay in Sheldon, right? Yeah, okay.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Catherine. All in favor, let's start with Erin.
Erin, aye.
John, I.
Emily, aye. Miranda, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Mary, aye.
Catherine, I.
Thank you. Look how easy that was. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We'd love for you to stay and sit through the rest of this meeting with us. We're a really fun crowd to hang out with, but I understand that there might be other things on your schedule this evening that make this not the priority. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that. Congratulations on your new home.
So I'm going to give a very brief legislative update. Most of you, with the exception of Miranda and John, probably received the legislative update number 3 from the VSBA. Some big things to tune into that you're going to be seeing and hearing a lot more about is the weighting study that's happening. So a lot of conversations around, when you talk equalized pupil, you get those weird fractions of a pupil. It's because certain pupils account for more than other pupils, because in theory it costs more to educate some children. Like if a child is an English language learner, or they are a high school student, or they are a child who lives in poverty, you get a higher weight for each of those students. So UVM did a study, and it really kind of refactors how much weight each of those categories should receive. So there's right now a lot of conversation, and we're just encouraging people to be really thoughtful about this, because there's no more money that's going to go into the education system. So whatever decisions get made at the legislative level are going to have impacts. They're going to be districts who, because of the factors that they have in their student population, will get more of that pie, and there'll be other districts that have children with different demographics that'll get a little less. So it is, as you can imagine, an emotional and kind of heated debate around what this weighting study does. We've looked at the analysis, and for the NMV piece of the weighting study, it appears that you're going to be about neutral given the factors that you have for your student population. So there won't be a huge impact here if the legislature were to accept the UVM weighting study recommendations as written. Okay, so just stay tuned. You'll be hearing more about that. There was information that came out of House Ways and Means just about education spending per equalized pupil. It was lower than they anticipated. They had forecasted 5.53%, and it was coming in at 4.96%, which is going to have a positive impact on your dollar yield, which will ultimately lead to a lower tax rate. Still, there's lots of conversation happening about universal pre-kindergarten. That keeps coming around the legislative session each year, and it doesn't find its way all the way through. This year, they're taking it up again. So stay tuned around information around universal pre-K. That's very important to these principals that are sitting across from me because they are managing programs now. And for us as a SU, we've just agreed to hire a pre-K coordinator. So the oversight for these programs is really complicated because they're having to navigate the regulations between Agency of Human Service and Agency of Education. And we're also having to navigate funding private pre-K. So there's a lot of complexity happening there. There's a lot of discussion happening about early literacy in the legislature this year. There are recommendations being made around putting some grant funding and some requirements in place around early literacy intervention. So you definitely are hearing about that. There's universal after school. The governor talked about in his State of the Union address, which I think what he has talked about is piloting after the Vermont Youth Project. There's 6 schools throughout the state who are piloting Vermont Youth Project. We have 2 of them. Enosburg and Richford both have received that project funding. So more to come on that. One of the things they're considering is funding that through the taxation and regulation of cannabis. So we'll see. The minimum wage, we haven't talked about this much, but I don't believe it's going to have an impact on us. Our wages is just above that line, so I think we're going to be good. One bill that is in the House right now that I am worried about is H805, and it's an act relating to collective bargaining rights of teachers, and I'm very worried about that if that gains any traction. For those of you who've been around for a while, we struggle with teacher retention in the supervisory union. We tend to train our teachers up, and then the draw of the cities of St. Albans and Burlington and the Chittenden County area tends to take our teachers that way. So we're in a constant churn of training new staff members, which does have a direct impact on students and student learning. So that's something we're trying to be really creative in our teacher licensure program that we're bringing in and partnering with UVI on, and also our principal licensure program. But if this H805 were to pass, right now teachers receive their contracts on or around April 15th. They have around 14 days to sign their contract, 14 or 15, and then they can ask for an automatic extension to that. But once that extension is up, we hold them firm. So by the middle of May, they're either deciding to stay or not. We don't release after that point because of the impact that has on kids. So if we were to, if something tremendous happened and someone's spouse got, sent somewhere where they had to move, obviously we would recommend that we release for that. But if it's not for something really big like that, we don't release for those contracts. So if we started releasing, if this bill passes, it's saying that it would modify the current law to allow teachers to seek and accept employment while under contract, which would mean there'd be no end to that when teachers could churn and leave us. So these principals know when you start getting into June and July, what happens to your candidate pool for teachers.
It's gone.
It's gone. We have very small pools anyway, so this would have a really damaging effect on our students. Some of the areas in our state, like I said, Chittenden County, I don't believe that they're not struggling with attracting teachers the way we are. 1 is wage, 2 is their geography. But for us and other geographically remote areas, this would really harm kids. So I am definitely not in favor of that, and I have offered to speak about that in Montpelier if that moves forward. School construction aid is also something you're going to continue to hear about. There's been a moratorium on school construction aid for almost 20 years. I don't remember the exact date. Was it like 03 maybe? It was somewhere in that early 2000s. So there's been a lot of deferred maintenance around the state. So you see a lot of construction projects now that are popping up because people can't really avoid dealing with what they need to deal with. So the legislature is trying to figure out how to manage and see if there are ways to fund state aid for school construction projects. So lots of conversations happening about proficiency-based learning in the legislature. I know that the state board took testimony on proficiency-based learning for the better part of 7 hours last month. And I think that you definitely have people on both sides of the spectrum that would argue that this is not what's good for our education system, and then you have others that would argue that it really is. For me, this is my take on this has been tremendously big work. And for us to, at this point, to say, nope, we're going to change our mind and kind of pull the rug out, I think that it would be a mistake at this point, because we have a lot invested in this, and there's good work happening. We haven't, around the state, all had the same entry points, so some of those experiences people have had with proficiency-based learning, and probably more likely proficiency-based grading, which is different than the proficiency-based learning. It's been because of the entry point in the way in which people started. So there's not been a real like play-by-play of how to do this. It's complex work, and I think that it is right work to really be focusing on what we want our kids to know, and then really digging in and making sure that we do everything we can to ensure that they're all learning that, what our priorities are. You see a bill about contraceptives in school that is out there right now, just asking that contraception condoms are available free of charge to students in grades 7 through 12. There's also some school meal, looking at wanting to require free breakfast and lunch for all students that I saw that has come out of the legislature. Anybody have any questions on that? I know that was a really quick, talking faster than I usually talk, update. I'm going to jump into teacher negotiations. We have not started yet. We're in the brainstorming, not problem solving, but planning, thinking phase of the goals that we should be really in tune with around teacher negotiation. We identified a couple of years ago that retention is a big piece of this, and for me as a leader, and I hope for the principals, the work we're doing around the multi-tiered system of supports for all of our students, and ensuring that we have the right people doing the right work within each of our systems is a big driver in my thinking about what we really need to try to navigate towards in this negotiation round. So we will start on March 23rd. We have 3 meetings set up between March 23rd and the middle of April with our teacher group. So I'll be seeing Mary and Jean Marie at those meetings. In January, we negotiated with the support staff, and at this point, the support staff is meeting in each of the schools, and they're working to ratify the negotiated support staff master agreement. Morgan sent that out to all of you to take a look at. I recognize Miranda and John, you probably have not seen that yet, so because that was sent out a couple of weeks ago. So you don't have to feel like you have to vote on this piece. If you would rather abstain, that's fine. But what I'm going to ask for is the board to make a motion to ratify the support staff master agreement.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mary. All in favor? Erin, you want to start us off?
Sure, Erin, I.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Abstain.
John?
Emily, I.
John abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I want to give you an update on the Portrait of a Graduate work. It is really exciting. I'm so thrilled that the SU board agreed to move forward with this. For John and Miranda, we've just begun a process of working with a group of students who are representative of all 6 of our towns who attend our 2 high schools. They're mostly sophomores and juniors. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 freshmen. There are about a dozen kids. They're working with a consultant, and what they're doing is they're trying to really take a look at if we were to develop kind of a portrait of what all FNESU graduates, what are the skills and dispositions they should all have, what would that look like? So we're starting with a student first approach, so we're really wanting to hear from them. What do they feel like is most important for them to be to know and be able to do and be ready for as they enter the world? And they met for the first time just before the vacation, and I was able to have lunch with them, and I was so impressed with how serious they were taking it and the kinds of questions they were asking. It was great. And they actually said, we don't know enough about this and this. Could you get us some experts to teach us? One of the things they wanted to know about, which I thought was very profound for a group of a dozen high school kids, we don't know what kind of skills that our industry leaders feel like kids should have as they enter the workforce. So could you find us someone who's a leader in the job field, right? So we've been working with the tech center director, and he's putting them in touch with people who will go and present to them about, what's the forecast for jobs in the region and what are kind of the skills and dispositions people are looking for as kids enter the workforce. So they're taking it really seriously.
Awesome.
They have a board member partner in each of the towns, and they're going to be reaching out to them. They meet again on March 9th, and they're going to be going out into the community and talking to community stakeholders to get their feedback about what they think FNESU graduates should have when they leave our system. They're going to, they'll hand it off to a representative stakeholder group where we will engage the larger community in the discussion, and the SU board in April will receive the information from the kids. And then after all of that, then the educators get to take a look at it and feed it. And what we typically do in education is we're leaders, right? Like we usually lead that kind of work. And this is a completely backwards way of designing this. And I'm really excited about it because it's starting with the kids, which is right where I think this should be starting. So, and Wendy's doing a great job. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
I just wanted to make a comment before you go.
Okay.
That I am so excited that the budget passed.
Yes.
I just want to talk about that for a second. Like, I think that, there were some folks in our communities that were really big supporters. I was really excited about the meeting that we had in Montgomery. I think we had a lot of great questions, like thoughtful questions, and I forget if it was you or someone else I was sharing with recently about one of the members of the Bakersfield community asked me a question, and I was like, oh gosh, and then at the end I realized, like, oh no, he's on my side, like he gets this, and he had a really valid question. And so it was really great to have that community input, and I know that we'll never have a budget that 100% of our community members think is perfect, right? That there are always going to be some folks that are unhappy, but I think as I talk with my coworkers that live in the greater Chittenden County area, and they're like, I'm really thankful I'm on the South Burlington board, or the Burlington board. I think that, we put in some really good things that were thoughtful, and I think are smart moves for us as a supervisory union and as a district. And I just want to recognize the effort that we put in there, and that I'm really thankful that we all did a fairly decent job communicating that to our communities, because they saw fit to go ahead and pass that. So I just want to thank everybody for the efforts that we put in there. And thank you again. I sent a message to Courtney and Dominic. I am just like so freaking excited that we live streamed that meeting. Like, I'm so glad that we did that. And I think that was just, I know we were groundbreaking. Like,
yes.
Lynn shared that she had communicated with the Vermont School Board Association. They're like, oh yeah, no one else has done that. We have no idea how to give you any guidance on that. So,
or if they have, they didn't know about it.
Yeah. So I know I pushed hard on that, and I'm just really thankful for the work that was done on the
Courtney and Dominic did all the legwork on that, and it was exciting to see it actually work.
Yeah.
And it was so reinforcing to hear in the moment how many people were online. You probably didn't see her, but Courtney was in the corner, like, sign languaging me, telling me how many viewers.
Yeah.
And I did hear there was like a Sheldon viewing party, like multiple people watching on one. But it was
fantastic.
It was reinforcing, and I know that wasn't maybe what it was intended for, but it was reinforcing after, because it got posted to our YouTube page, and we get to watch that number ticker just keep growing and growing. So I know that there's a sense of loss about not having the informational meetings that within each of our communities, but if I think about the last 2 years, my first 2 years as a superintendent, and the number of folks who attended in each of our towns combined, I think that the number of people who viewed it online exceeds the number of people who would generally have
Yeah,
viewed
exactly.
in person. So
It seems
it's
like a really
exciting.
nice way to like continue to honor our communities and if you weren't able to log in at 7 o'clock on Wednesday or whatever it was, like that they could go back and watch it later. I mean, I went back to look at like, how did I answer that question? And, you know, it's just a great way to try to still keep folks connected and like, I guess it was Rhoda, you and I were having this conversation. I mean, that meeting went till 8:30. Like in my time on the board, which has been like 8 years or something, we've never had a meeting go that long. It's been like a half an hour. So I just think that it was a really great, you know, I'm thankful that we did that. I'm thankful that we were able to offer that. And I'll tell you, it was exhausting to have those finance meetings in every single town. We all know that last year when we went from town to town to town, and to have a half a dozen or a dozen people turn out at that meeting, this was very empowering, and I think we got to a lot more people that way. So I hope we can do that.
Thank you for pushing on us about that, because I'm also very proud that we were able to make that happen.
Yeah.
And this board, the NMV board, is pretty unique because you actually have a legislator who serves on this board. Lisa Hango represents this region, and she's a resident of Berkshire. So we now, as a result of pushing for the live, will have better technology starting in March. We weren't able to pull it together for this meeting, but better technology for remote access to the meeting as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. So thank you.
I know,
Now
I
you can go.
certainly had people come up in my community and say they weren't able to attend. They watched it after the fact, but prior to the vote, and it was answered all, you know, almost all their questions were answered, and it was pretty instrumental in helping them kind of decide how they were going to vote.
That's awesome.
So we got some really good feedback in Montgomery for sure.
That's great. Thank you. So thank you. Okay, run off.
I got the same feedback in Bakersfield. I sat for just a little bit at a Girl Scout cookie booth at town meeting day, and so many people came up to me and were really grateful that we had offered that because they just couldn't make the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, the way their job went. So, and even mentioned the fact that they had some questions, but by the time they were done, they were all answered and they had nothing, you know, they wouldn't have had a question submit if we had had that option.
Yeah. Home run team. That was awesome.
Nice.
I'm so
We like
glad
to
we
hear
did
that.
that. Thank you. And I just
Leaving
want
you
to
in-
acknowledge that. So thank you.
Leaving you in the good hands of these principals. Bye, everyone.
Okay. So thank you, Lynn. Let's go back to the top of the agenda and go. We haven't approved our previous minutes or policies or anything, so can we do that before we'll move back to the principal reports?
Can we separate out, because I did have a couple questions about
Sure.
policies.
Yeah,
So I'll make
sure.
a motion to approve the previous minutes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that signify by saying aye. Aaron?
Erin, I.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
John,
Thank you. Okay, and policies?
Yeah, so, I mean, and now with Lynn gone, I'm not sure because she's probably the one who knows the answer to my question. But I was just curious, in the disciplinary section of these policies around restraint
Yeah.
but more specifically the seclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it's still, I mean, there are a number of states across the country that have banned seclusion as a general practice, or have, you know, are in the it's kind of in the works. I know in Missouri, I think Illinois has banned it. So it somewhat surprised me that it's kind of part of the conversation still in education in Vermont that we allow for seclusion. So I was just wanting some clarification around
Do you know
this.
Which policy that is? Is that
Yeah.
F2?
Yeah, it's F2.
Oh, no, it's F8 restricted.
F8, restrictive behavioral interventions. I mean, I'm sure it's probably used at a very last resort, if ever, is my sense, but I was just curious if there's any motion at the legislative level or at the state level to end seclusion.
Probably Lynn would know the
Yeah.
answer to that one better than anybody else.
Mary, I wondered if the language on that was more of a, I'm trying to remember reading this, if it included the fact that the student was secluded, but there was an adult in the room, they were in their own separate space, so that the space was safe for that child. So that not necessarily they were in a room by themselves.
Oh, see, I read it as they are in a room by themselves. It is distinct from a time out
Oh, no,
where.
it says, does not include timeout where a student is not left alone and is under adult supervision.
Okay.
Yes, seclusion means the confinement of a student alone in a room or area from which the student is prevented or reasonably believes he or she will be prevented from leaving. Seclusion does not include timeout where a student is not left alone and is under adult supervision. So it truly is seclusion, alone in a room.
And reasonably believes he or she will be prevented from leaving. That language is kind of further troubling, I find.
And this is from the Agency of Education.
Right.
So it's not really
I mean, so
our policy to.
So we don't have any, we have no agency over this part? I mean, we're obligated to accept this because it's coming from the state?
I think that would be correct. That would
Okay.
be I don't think a local board can change something that's coming down from
I
the
see.
Agency of
Okay.
Education.
I wonder if that's why it didn't come up at policy, because I know we didn't, I don't think that even came
Says
up.
that much.
Huh. Well, it makes sense that it's something that comes from the state level because everything I read up on, the moves to kind of end it across the country in different states, that it's that kind of movement is at a state legislative level for sure. So, okay.
I was going to say we could, I know Lisa wasn't able to join us today. It didn't come up at policy.
Yeah, that's what I meant, is that at the policy meeting, nobody,
Brought
I
that
think,
up.
touched on that.
Yeah.
Do
'Cause
you-
I was gonna say, we could just kick that one policy down the road till
So
the
we
next
could
meeting.
clarify it a bit. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm curious, in our schools, how do you all deal with, with a seclusion? Do you have, I assume it's, like I said, very last resort. I just have a hard time wrapping my head and heart around a situation where a child is alone in a room with no supports.
I don't think they're ever alone. There's an adult always.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we may not be in the room with them, but there is always, we are watching what's happening. Like, I've never left a child without being right outside the door,
Okay,
if it got to that point.
yeah.
So there's kind of two factors too.
Yeah.
For some children, doing a restraint is not the preferred way to help self-manage and soothe that child because of a trauma in their background where that extra hands-on restraint when they've been unsafe or are being unsafe, it's not preferred. And we've seen a lot of success with some children who when they start out in our school environment, I'm talking like or over years or weeks or even months, where they start out very explosive and unsafe to themselves or others. And then we utilize what originally had been interpreted as our timeout protocol. This past fall, the AOE kind of came back and hammered down more clearly about the seclusion, their interpretation, a big piece. And we had a conversation with all of our principals, that piece that you keyed into about, we thought we were not doing seclusion when we were doing what we thought was a timeout protocol, a very, very unsafe, dysregulated child creating safety issues themselves or others who has a background that indicates it is not appropriate or most therapeutic for us to go hands-on with them. We would have them in the safe space. We use our timeout protocol. We can observe through a two-way window to see what's going on. We're verbally de-escalating with the child, but we're not in the space because that's creating a safety issue for both us or them. We are by the door though, and that was where the interpretation, we thought that was considered timeout, but the AOE says now if they think they can't get out, it counts as seclusion. And for a lot of us, we thought seclusion was like that true kind of prison-style isolation, no human contact, and some of us would say, well, they can get out. They just need to calm their body down, sit down, we'll start a timer, and once they show they're calm, they can get out. It's still within their control. But even then, the AOE said, if they push on that door and they cannot open the door, we're going to count as seclusion. And so that's sort of where the interpretation landed on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable, what's your pleasure with this policy?
I mean, I don't think that this particular policy, we have any, could have any impact on this policy. So whether I like the policy or not, I mean, I appreciate the clarification and I'm sure you all understand the nuances and it's probably so situation and child specific in any given moment, but it sounds like were there to be any shift in this, it's coming from way above our pay grade.
Yes.
So,
and I know some people talked about like not closing the door, and I try to be empathetic to some of the environments. Some of these things sound like they're not very kind to the child. They just sound like really sad instances. But when we've done things where we've tried to co-regulate while in the safe space, the physical presence of the human for certain children is that outlet that continues to allow them to be de-escalated. We've seen a lot of success. We're just simply removing that stimulus, and at first the child might be really upset, and then with a couple minutes, or sometimes it starts out longer, and then eventually they get used to the routine, they learn to self-manage. And kids who first time their seclusion might be 30 minutes of them using some really inappropriate language and really dysregulated, after they realize, oh, here are the expectations I need to meet in order to get out, it starts being like a 1 minute or a shorter cycle. But in the short-term moment, it looks like it's not really working. So some of those people, and I see why there's certain treatments of children we don't want to do, but to say like we couldn't do that at all, we couldn't use that process because that counts as seclusion, you cannot do it, I'd be really worried about our ability to effectively support some kids. If you can't even simply close that door and that child's really upset, they're going to push through you, and now they're going to re-up and create another difficult situation, or then we're going to have to go hands-on. And so I think it really limits the tools we can use to be therapeutic to support kids. I hate the moment though, like and sometimes you're sitting on the other side of that door and the kid is kicking on it saying, let me out. And and we know with some children, they use all the strategies. First it's angry, and I didn't get angry, so then I'll switch it to the sad voice and see if you can give me that empathy that way. And we're still saying, your job is to be calmly sitting in that corner, and once you have a calm mind, calm voice, we'll start the timer and then we can process with you. And sometimes it's like that. It'll shift, and all of a sudden the child regulates, gets out of the reptilian brain, gets back into the frontal lobe, and then we can have that really effective processing conversation. But if we didn't have that structure that contains them and removes stimulus, that's where we have the continued cycle of unsafe behavior.
which makes it seem as though it's not categorically an awful practice. It's used in the right kind of moment and in the right situation, it can have a therapeutic kind of successful ending.
Yeah.
And I think this policy it moved, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it moved seclusion down to something that now needs to be documented every time it happens, where before it wasn't?
Yes,
Okay. So that's just another way to kind of keep an eye on how we're using it and making sure it's beneficial for everyone involved.
It also clarified the definition.
Right.
So that so this is exactly what it is. And if you use that, then you do have to document it. And families have to receive that information that happened. I mean, I think best practices that we would let them know anyway, but they actually have to receive documentation in the mail, and and everything has to be described, and that has to get sent to central office, and then the state. So it's not. I mean, even just if you think of the paperwork involved, I wouldn't say it's something that anyone takes lightly. Right. And these are spaces that, at least in Sheldon, right, that the door doesn't lock. There's not even a latch on it, right? It is a door that swings, and I could hold it, right? But there's a window, and so it's not. It is not, locked in a closet kind of
right.
thing.
I mean, I think my fear is
does it
re-traumatize or continue to traumatize a child who's already struggling with so much emotion and a lot of challenges.
Yeah, but they're also kind of called safe spaces. A lot of them have, if the child is out of control, then it's dangerous if they're in a room full of places where they can bump their head and throw their bodies into, and these spaces don't have anything inside, so it is a safe space where they won't get hurt.
Yeah.
And part of the paperwork, but also part of our systems of support is one of the first questions you have to answer is this child on a behavior plan? If the child's not on a behavior plan, why is the child currently not on a behavior plan? And if the child continues to need to access seclusion levels of supports, the school needs to be doing their next steps to show why this is what we're doing or what else are we going to do to address it, which would include having those conversations of what is the best mode of response.
Yeah.
And if it's a child that the seclusion method is further traumatizing based on research that we've done, based on the analysis we've done, then we would come up with an alternative.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be something we keep doing over and over again if it's
Right.
not working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion about
Sure.
the policies?
I will make a motion to accept policies,
First and second
first
reading?
and second reading.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns about the policies? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aaron?
Erin, I.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Sheldon,
Thank you. And I realize as I'm sitting here, the fact that like I didn't get to start this meeting off, I feel like I'm a little off kilter, but maybe we should do introductions, because I'm not sure that you all know. So, Sandy, would you start?
Yes, I'm Sandy Alexander, principal in Montgomery. Welcome.
Christy Martin, principal at Sheldon.
Rhoda McClure, principal at Bakersfield.
Lenny Bordeaux, principal at Berkshire.
John Jejix.
Thank
New
you.
member.
Welcome.
This, and everyone's heard before.
Yeah, welcome. And Miranda. And I'm Jean Marie Clark from the Bakersfield town.
Mary Niles from Montgomery.
Catherine Barnard from Montgomery.
And hopefully you know Morgan.
Morgan Taylor, business manager.
I'm Emily Norris from Sheldon.
I'm with Berkshire if I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. As you were all talking and I was thinking like, gosh, they do such a great job. I thought, oh my gosh, these people don't know who they are.
I had to take a photo of their names so I could know how to spell.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
See, it's kind of rhythmic after you.
Once you get
practice
used to it, you're like, oh, I get it.
I got the pad.
And I think that, you know, this is, like, Lynn was buzzing through her stuff tonight, and this is a lot. It can be really overwhelming as a new board member, so, it'll get easier.
The pace slows a little bit.
It will
this
slow,
week
yeah.
because I was trying to take notes and then I realized I lost my place. She was on a whole other part of the agenda.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
lunch.
and, you know, a lot of what she was talking about was the legislative update, and that comes in from the VSBA, and you'll get on that email distribution list, so you'll get those memos yourself, so. It definitely goes a little slower than it is going tonight, so thank you, and we're excited to have you on the board. Okay, now I think we're at principal reports. So it's our practice that the principals all submit reports to us in advance of the meeting. Oh, sorry.
Spotlight.
Oh, I thought you might have skipped me.
Where are we? Oh my gosh, I like don't even know where we are.
This, 7:15.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm
20
sorry.
minutes, School spotlight.
I am so like, I can't even figure out where we are tonight. Honestly, I had to read to make sure I was going to the right place before I got the car to come here. So we do a school spotlight every board meeting evening, and tonight it is our friend Sandy's
Turn.
turn. Who did it last time? I'm trying to remember. Was it you,
Christy.
Yes, yeah.
She did the Rise Vermont.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I think that's it.
Sorry, Aaron. Sandy's
really
going
know.
to do a little presentation about Montgomery.
Okay.
I've been all set up.
You could turn that on too.
This does feel so backwards.
It's
There you go.
We did the visitors and now
It's the internet now that's
we
going to be
usually start at the
American.
top and work our way down.
I haven't been on Xfinity Wi-Fi, been on the board meeting thing.
No, she said she can come here for some reason.
Well, if I can't use that, it's okay. I can just type my way through it.
I really.
That's better, thank you.
So I only have a couple little video clips to show, but I just thought I would give you some information about our Vermont lottery grant that we were awarded in Montgomery, and a little bit of a timeline. I know that our Montgomery people have heard about it before, but I figured it was so exciting that I'd like to share. So Nicola Charity is our second grade teacher, and she is one of our best technology teachers in the school. And she, of course, she's young, you know how that goes. And she goes to Vermont Fest, and last year when she went to Vermont Fest, she met a woman named Lucy Delabrere, and I'm not sure I'm saying that last name properly, but I don't know, Delabrere, is that, okay, so that's how you say the name. And Lucy has been teaching in Vermont for 30 years. She was in the classroom for 20, became, I think more than 30 now, and became like a teacher leader, all having to do with passion for tech integration and so forth. And now she's with a company with the Tarrant Institute, and this is just a little piece that I have about Lucy, that it says Lucy's work for the Tarrant Institute includes helping schools ask right questions when designing maker-centered learning and maker spaces in their schools. She's committed to helping students and teachers learn through creating and making, and to move the conversation from what and how to why and who. So Lucy really inspired our second grade teacher, and they made an instant connection, which brought Lucy to our school. She goes around to different schools in the state and does this makerspace learning. So we had an entire day of makerspace learning with Lucy last January. I have a little collage that the second grade teacher put together that I can pass around if you want to take a peek at that. So after that, right after that in January, Lucy informed Nicole that there's this $15,000 Vermont lottery grant out there, and the timeline was super short. We only had like a few weeks until the due date. So Nicole came to me with it, and I said, we'll pull a team together and see what we can do. And they banged out this lottery proposal in a couple of days. I got some subs for them, and we figured it all out and sent off the proposal, and lo and behold, we were contacted that we were one of 2 schools in the state to receive this $15,000 free money from the lottery grant. So it was meant to be, it's called the Educate Maker Program. So it's a partnership with the AOE, and it is all about makerspace and technology. So our grant proposal was to create an interactive nature trail around our school. So what we already have, we're lucky, there's a beautiful spread of woods between Montgomery Elementary and the rec department. And in there's already a path with a bridge that goes over the water, so it's a perfect spot. And so now we've gone in there and investigated it and found a spot for an outdoor classroom to be created. And there's all kinds of ideas about how we can weave this into the curriculum and how we can get the kids outdoors to create this interactive nature trail. So in the meantime, the lottery wanted us to purchase large items with our $15,000 budget. So 2 of the big ticket items were a laser engraver, which carves out wooden items, burns it right into the wood. It burns pieces. It's amazing how intricate this machine will cut the wood. And then a 3D printer. So, and amongst a bunch of other smaller items for makerspace. So we've got a whole bunch of other things as well. So when we purchased the items, the lottery wanted us to give them the information about where to purchase them. They wanted to purchase them, send them to our school, and after that all happened, they wanted to come out and film something. So we had what we called Montgomery Maker Fest, and that happened in May. So we set up all these different places where the students could rotate around and get a view of the machinery and all that, and this is the first time they were actually introduced to the fact that we won this grant and this is what was coming our way. So I'll just play this one little clip that was when it was introduced. I don't have speakers anyway. Look at this. It's spinning. Can I do it? to get it.
If you push escape, Sandy, will it get out of that?
It won't, oh, it did.
It's just like filled with like candy and like some personal items. They decorate it to like. Isn't that really cool? And it took us super long time.
Wow.
I think that's the end of that one, or it's the internet.
I think it's just buffering.
It keeps bumping me off of the internet too. Well, I'll kill that one anyways, we'll see. I'll get rid of that one. And so that was in May, and since then we've done some professional development kind of leading up to actually getting out into the woods and so forth. And we had a full day. I don't know if you've heard of Kurt Valenta, the bug guy that does bug works. And so we did hire him to come out for a professional development day. And it was a full day of my in-service with teachers last summer. And it was on a Friday. And it was a beautiful day. And Kurt just took us out into the woods and just got us to look at things that you just don't normally look at when you're walking through the woods, you know. And we were out there for hours. It was very, very productive for the teachers to kind of give them ideas of what they can do with the students. And so we've had Kurt, and then we had Lucy come back again, and she works, I sent the two teachers, our art teacher and our librarian also had a hand in writing the grant. So the second grade teacher and the art teacher went to the Create, Make, Learn in the summertime. It's a 1-week program in Burlington. One of them did the full week, and the other one did a 2-day boot camp to learn about the laser printer and the 3D printer. So the last thing that happened was that Lucy came out and worked with the two teachers, and that's kind of the last thing that happened. And she created this.
Yeah, that's Montgomery.
Bakery score. Is that the driveway? No, I think that's the gore. Oh.
Yeah, that was coming from Belvedere.
I figured, that looks like Avery. I was like, that looks like Avery's score.
It did.
It's the zone, you never want to go off the road there.
So that was the last of our professional development so far, and I'm meeting with Nicole and with Danielle for next steps, and when, our next steps are, as soon as the snow melts a little bit more, we'll get the kids out into the woods. So we were also trying to think about, what are we gonna name this interactive nature trail and outdoor classroom, and I said MES Goes Wild. Sounded pretty good to me. So anyway, or MES Live and Unplugged or something like that. So
Nice.
anyway, so that's where we're at with our lottery grant.
That's awesome.
That's
Thank you, Sandy.
awesome, thanks Sandy.
Okay, now I think it's the principal's report. So it is our practice that the principals submit their reports in advance, so it comes in your packet, so you have an opportunity to read it before this evening. And because our meetings are late and long, then this is an opportunity for us to ask them questions about their report. Unfortunately, we don't give them time to talk about it themselves. We just have to read it in advance and ask them questions. So, anybody, I have a question. How's the oven working
I
at
knew you were
Bakersfield?
gonna ask that. So we had an oven today, yay.
Yay.
We had, I can't even remember the name, Casey Mechanics, I
That's what I
think.
use. They're great.
Yeah, come out. And they fixed the oven for about $500. I haven't seen the actual bill yet, but said it would be around there, so hoping that's true.
Better than a new oven.
Yes. In the meantime, Dawn has also been looking at equipment grants, and there is an equipment grant that's out right now, and she and I put that together, and so that we are looking at the possibility of a new oven for next year with some support from that grant. The oven is more than 40 years old, we discovered. So it's a pretty old oven and has had quite a few issues here and there. So I think it is time, but it's working for now.
Yeah, okay, that's good news.
Yeah.
I know there was some quick action when it wasn't working, just before
Yes.
the break, so, yeah. Any other questions for the principals, folks? Okay.
Anybody have any action items?
Oh, yes. See, I really don't know what I'm doing tonight. Thank you, Morgan. Did anybody have action on there? No? Why did I think somebody did?
I thought Sheldon did.
Yes, I thought somebody
I
did.
think Lynn took care of that under hers.
I think that was the,
Oh, okay.
It's not
The
an action
student
item, but
one.
it's on my report.
Okay.
Make sure you all have an invitation to our Shakespeare.
Thank you so much. Okay, Morgan, I guess it's you now then.
So I have a few things for you, and I am going to need to take you briefly into executive session, but I think these are all going to be pretty quick. I sent you the audits for Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Montgomery. I have seen a final draft of Sheldon's, but not the final that I can share with you yet. There were no concerns that I noted there, and I'll pass that along when I have the real final copy for that. So tonight, if you're willing, I would have you make a motion to accept the Bakersfield Town School District, Berkshire Town School District, and Montgomery Town School District audits for the year ended June 30th, 2019 on behalf of those districts and their dissolved boards. And the language for that motion came from our auditors because you guys are now a different entity that didn't have any control over those districts. So somebody needs to accept the audits, but it's making it clear that you're just doing it because you're the successor board to them.
So, hold on, your sample motion in your memo includes the Sheldon Town?
And I didn't
you wanna
include
skip that?
Skip that for now
For now,
because you
okay.
haven't seen that audit
Gotcha,
yet.
that's what I thought.
Well, I'll make that motion. So we are on behalf of the dissolved school districts of Berkshire, Bakersfield, and Montgomery, accepting the audits from last year ending June 30th, 2019.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mary. All in favor? Do you want to start us off, Aaron?
Sure. Erin, I.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
John,
Thank you.
I'm gonna skip ahead to lawn care contracts. Eventually we'll be mowing grass again.
Sure.
Montgomery and Sheldon both take care of their own lawns, using their own equipment and staff. Berkshire and Bakersfield currently have a contract with King's Property Service for lawn care. I've reached out to King's and they are willing to roll the contract over at the same rate. And I just need some guidance on whether you want to bid that out because you want to bid everything out. The Enosburg-Richford Board seems to be taking that tack on a lot of contracts. Or if you want me to work with your two affected principals and either renew it at no increase or bid it out based on how they're feeling there.
They're willing to renew it at no increase?
King's is willing to renew it at the same price as last year.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Now, the new position that's...
Oh, facilities manager?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that something that they would be working on, like trying to procure?
Maybe when the time, like as far as like soliciting bids.
It could be, but we're gonna have a lot of mowings in this summer before that person's hired.
Yeah.
So what, yeah, that was my next question,
Yeah.
is when is that person gonna get hired?
Well, we have to create the job
Yep.
and post it, and we couldn't do that until the budget passed, which was yesterday.
So is this most likely a position for next school year?
Yeah, exactly.
It would go into effect July 1st, like fiscally
If
speaking.
all goes well,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and that facilities position is like building manager, right? So not like toilet cleaner, but bid solicitor potentially, yeah. So, I am under the impression that the service has been very affordable and fine in Bakersfield. Lenny?
I mean, as Morgan said previously, the price that they're offering us doesn't seem like it's financially possible, but they're doing
they're
a good
doing
job,
it,
so
and
we
we
will
love them
continue
for
saying
it.
yes to that offer.
Because they're doing all sports fields and everything?
Yeah, they do the whole thing, and we do have a lawnmower, a ride-on lawnmower that we can use if necessary too, but they've been doing a good job.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like if it ain't broke.
Yeah, that's
Right.
kind of where I'm at. I don't want to bid it out just to bid it out. That seems kind of like a waste
So
of
I
time.
don't need a motion, but I'll work with Lenny and Rhoda
Cool.
to firm that up. So I'm gonna go back to the Sheldon Elementary Envelope Project. We had our walkthrough on February 17th. We had pre-qualified 7 bidders. 2 of them showed up for that. We had heard in advance 4 had decided because of what else is out there being bid, they decided they were not gonna come up here and bid on that. A 3rd we had hoped was gonna show up and didn't. The 2 outfits that came were Spates Construction out of Derby, which did the Berkshire expansion
Oh, yeah.
a few years ago, and Kingdom Construction, which did the 2004 project in Montgomery. So they're both firms that are known quantities, and both of those projects were quite successful. We had bid opening today. They did both submit bids.
Did you have to go to the walkthrough to submit a bid? Could you have
Yes.
skipped that? Oh, no, you couldn't have. Okay.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna project and kind of walk you through this. You're not gonna be able to see that, are you? So the way that Vermont bid law is written for projects of a certain size is that you, the board, can pre-qualify contractors, but you're obligated to take the lowest bidder of the ones that you pre-qualify. And if they're within 1% of each other, you can choose one over the other. But if they're outside of that range, you would go with the low one. So the base bid is what they proposed for sort of the initial package of improvements that we put out to bid. As you can see, Spates came in at 1.19 million, Kingdom at 1.27. So pretty close, which gives us confidence that they both knew what they were doing. In Montgomery, we had the low bidder was significantly lower than everybody else, and our first conversation with them was, did you screw something up and forget a couple of classrooms?
And we budgeted 1.7.
Yep.
The bond was for 1.7, so yeah, I'll get into that in a moment. We gave them the ability to bid on 9 alternates. So the first 3 are bringing bathrooms and the locker rooms into ADA compliance. And they're probably the highest need on here. A4 was to change some cabinetry and sinks in 4 of the classrooms. A5 was pricing for a better gym floor. You'll see those 2 numbers are negative, and we're trying to dig into why they would give us a better floor for a lower price. We have some theories on that, but we will confirm that when we get into contract negotiation. A6 was for controls for the heating system. They both decided to include that in the base bid. I think that's probably based on the subcontractors that they worked with. They didn't want to split it out, so general contractors didn't. Air handling unit in the classrooms, and then the heat retention unit. Return unit in the gym were 7 and 8. And then the last one, metal siding, was for a slightly higher quality and better looking siding than what was in the base bid. So what you as a board get to do now is to look at the overall budget and sort of decide which of these add-ons are more important than others, and how close initially you feel comfortable coming to that $1.7 million number, because things do come up in the course of a project. And so you can see if you were in a position where you could take all alternates, which you're not, Spates was still the low bidder.
But is it
so close?
But it's a
They were
fixed
close.
bid, right, Morgan? So cost overruns in a fixed
But what if they
bid?
like rip off the siding to replace it and find some
So
other
the
thing?
the cost
Right, I don't know what
overruns
their
are more
contingency is.
if they pull the siding off, and we said you're only going to have to replace the outside and it all crumbles because it's rotten.
Yeah.
Then we sit down at a table with them and they're going to give us a quote for fixing that. We saw it in Berkshire, that was there for that project. You were there. So site work is a big one. We're not doing any site work on this, but if you start digging up and you find a ledge, or you find a bunch of arrowheads, or you find an underground stream, things change pretty quickly on your project.
Yeah.
So there'll be some back and forth on that.
So the supplements are the kind of considered somewhat discretionary.
Right, so we wanted to be confident that if a base bid came back, that, if they had come in significantly higher than that, we would be able to still have the project under that base bid.
Yeah.
And then these would be the add-ons on it.
So can you just give me like the nutshell of what is included? I know these are the supplements, but what, it's like windows and?
Yep, so there's asbestos abatement in the gym and in the main lobby.
Okay.
You're replacing the floors in both of those places.
Yeah.
Converting the staff/public bathrooms into ADA compliance.
Okay.
Because they don't have any bathrooms that are ADA compliant right now. Replacing siding in the entire building, which I think was probably the initial focus of the whole thing. And then windows as well. They've got, each classroom has a window and a door going out to it, and they're big, relatively unsecured panes of glass. And then there's a little bit of rearranging traffic flow in the lobby area, also primarily to address some security concerns there.
Gotcha, okay.
Did I miss anything in the big?
Isn't it amazing that none of your bathrooms are ADA compliant? And asbestos abatement, I mean, I know there was like, oh, Sheldon's coming in with his bond, like, hello, your building has asbestos, like, we need to address this, so.
And then the security thing, I know, I'm sure Krista really enjoys going in the front door and her offices.
Right there, yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it makes sense, and a lot of it is deferred maintenance. I mean, our windows and doors in the classroom, there's, like, the moisture seals are gone, and you can see the condensation
Yeah,
inside out
yeah.
the window,
It's time.
yeah, it's time.
Gotcha.
We appreciate the support.
So this would be probably a good time to make a motion to go into executive for contract negotiation, and then we can kick around these ideas, and you can give me guidance on working out a contract with Spades.
Okay. This is the very last item on our agenda this evening, I feel like, other than our board business.
I can go to those other things. Under mine, financial update I sent by email late today. We did lawn care. I don't have any other. And then the budget vote was just there if it didn't go as we had hoped. But you had a 60% yes vote.
Yeah.
And every town supported it. So I don't see anybody contesting that. We'll wait for the 30 days before we start spending that money. But
Gotcha.
it was a pretty decisive victory.
Okay. Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to go into executive? Thank
Do we
you,
want to
Emma.
let the
Well, yeah,
principals
that's
just
what-
go?
yeah.
Because once we come out, we're gonna
I mean, we
wrap
do
up
love
pretty
school.
quickly.
You
Okay.
want to keep Christie for this.
I'll make that motion to go into executive.
So we'll go into executive at,
8 o'clock.
oh, 8 o'clock on the button, nice.
Like,
So we exited executive at 8:27, and now we are looking to have a motion made. Does somebody want to make the motion regarding the contract?
I'll make the motion to authorize Morgan to negotiate the agreed upon amount with Spades Construction for the Sheldon envelope project.
Is that what you're looking for, Morgan?
And give Jean Marie authority to
So I
sign away.
was gonna do that separately, but
Okay.
they can, you
Either
want
way.
them as one motion?
Either way.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aaron?
Aaron, aye.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
John,
Thank you. And a motion about,
I'll make the motion to authorize Jean Marie to sign the contract away from the table. The contract with Spades for the Sheldon envelope project away from the table.
thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aaron?
Aaron, aye.
Catherine, I.
Mary, aye.
Jean Marie, aye.
Emily, I.
John.
Thank you. That's all the motions you were looking for,
Those
Morgan?
are the two motions I was looking for.
Okay.
And I do not have anything under other.
Okay. So I think we're at board business. I'm so lost in our agenda this evening. Okay. Future agenda items. We resolved your policy questions, I think, Mary?
Yep.
Anything else we want to add to the future agenda items?
Nothing at the moment.
Aaron,
Nope.
you good? Okay. We're next meeting on April 1st at the Berkshire Elementary School at 6:30. Okay? Does anyone, any last comments before we leave? Okay. Motion to adjourn? Thank you, Emily. If you are in favor, please signify by putting on your coat and leaving. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Aaron.